There's an interesting debate right now, and it's in New York's Westchester County. It has to do with taxpayer responsibility. That is, how much say should individual taxpayers have over where their tax dollars ought to go, who they're used by, and where they get applied to. Westchester, along with Nassau and Suffolk counties, and some counties in northeast Jersey, they have some of the highest property rates in the nation. In fact, 19 of the top 20 rates are in the metropolitan area. Now, much of those dollars go to pay for education and schools costs. That's not something new here. That's where tax dollars typically get applied to across the country. But now the debate is heating up over education tax credits. I'll explain. It would let homeowners determine which schools receive the bulk of their tax liability. Now, in this case, a taxpayer could direct their money to a private school or a religious school or a charter school instead of public schools. Now, it's a move that may appeal to parents with kids outside of the public school system, but critics say tax credits will increase the gaps between the rich and the poor public school districts and also give too large a voice to taxpayers with the deepest pockets. Okay, now, I've heard the pros and the cons of this, and I can tell you that from the parochial school ranks here, typically tuition for a parochial kid, and this isn't just for parochial, this goes to charter schools, it doesn't even cover the cost of tuition. And the archdioceses don't have the money they used to anymore. This goes, by the way, to Shiva, this goes to not one denomination or one faith here, but across the board. They said, so wait a second, if I'm a taxpayer, why shouldn't I be able to spend money where I want it to go? I'll start with the devil's advocate of this, Dominic, which says, what happens to public schools which don't even have enough money to pay for art or sports or overcrowding classrooms or the rest? If you think you got have and have nots, just wait.
Sorry, Richard, dumbest idea I've ever heard in my life in terms of doing this. I understand the pros and cons. Look at your face. I understand the pros and cons of the entire argument, but being a parent that recently went through this, sending the kids to the public school system, paying taxes before the kids were old enough, and I was like, why am I paying all these taxes for the school system? And then when my kids got old enough, I'm like, great, I'm benefiting from my kids. And then after they were done, you're back to why am I paying all these school taxes? And then also, paying for one child to go to Catholic school. So I understand the full argument. But if you think the public school system is bad now, wait until you have an option of, okay, I'm not going to give to that school district that just happens to be a little darker than what I feel comfortable with, and I'm not going to give them. I see you looking at the clock.
I can't see the clock, Andy. Tonight here, I was looking at when we first went there.
The race element.
Do you have a rebuttal?
Well, I have to agree with Dom. I mean, my self-interest lies, I'm in sympathy with you, but I think Dom's right. I think this is an inevitable recipe for perpetuating the class system. I mean, if you think about the concentration of wealth, it's going to be given primarily to private schools that need it least, and the wealthier, more affluent public school districts that also need it least, and the ones that need it most are going to suffer. And I come from a yeshiva tradition and the boarding school tradition, so self-interest, I like it. For everybody else, I don't like it.
Andrew, it's interesting, the coalition that's building for this. You have a bunch of lawmakers, including Democrats, that are, I don't know if crossing lines is the right phrase here, but there's a meeting of the minds that 75 cents of every dollar. They said, say for example, you got a person making $1 million just to make the number easy, and certainly there's people in Westchester County that fit in this, and they're paying 67 grand, the analogy was, and the Journal News did a nice story on this. 17 grand basically continues to go into the county coffers for the education portion. 50 grand, though, would be discretionary to spend how they'd want, applying, as we said, to some of the different options. You got a lot of Democrats saying this isn't the worst thing.
Well, yeah, but I think the support pretty much falls on who would benefit from the groups who would receive the majority of the largesse in this case, where you have the charter schools, which, by the way, can lobby because they're private entities, where that they would be sending their money to religious schools, and which politicians have the backing of the religious school groups. I'm with Dominic and Mark on this one. To me, this smacks of the school choice debate that we had back in the 80s, that started back in the 80s, where kids should be able to go to whatever public school they want to, regardless of their geographic boundaries. That's one of the things that communities have always used to distinguish themselves and make themselves more appealing to other people. It's the quality of your school system. You want to raise a family, we have this great world-class school system for you. That's one of the selling points of the community. And I think you would find a lot of this money funneling into private schools.
Let me flip it on you for a second. Say you're a homeowner, right? You don't have kids. Would you resent at all having to go in your pocket to pay property taxes to subsidize schools of which you're getting no benefit?
I would resent it exactly the moment I'm signing the check. Other than that, that's part of the social compact. That's part of the rules of living where I live. And also, by the way, the better the school system is, the lower the crime rate is likely to be. The more my property value is likely to go up. So it benefits me in the long run, even though I'm signing over those big checks.
Can you connect the dots?
Checks.
Jeannie, you know, from the parochial side in you're at Iona on the college level, albeit, but this is an argument that's been percolating for a while, and you've had a lot of even the archdiocese leaders were vocal with this rally that took place earlier last week. It's interesting to me, the lawmakers signed up for this here. It seems that this thing's got a chance.
Yeah, and I don't think it's the dumbest idea I've ever heard, but I can understand both sides. I am not in agreement with it. And if you pull away from the issue of education, there's a few things that strike me as really problematic. Number one, taxpayers don't always agree with where their tax money is going. And there is a long-held legal tradition that we don't have the right to determine. Now, if I'm not in support of the war in Iraq, do I get to withhold tax money or direct it somewhere else? No, I do not. These are issues that I think need to be debated by our legislature, need to be decided by government. We don't live in a direct democracy where I can target my funds where I want them. So to me, that is very problematic. Another side of this is so only property owners get to make these decisions. We have a substantial population of people who are vital to our community who aren't property owners. So they get no say in where these tax money goes. To me, that strikes me as problematic. So from a variety of perspectives, I think this is really a slippery slope that I would not, support. I can understand the reason that people want to direct money, and this issue of school choice is very important, but by the same token, you can't allow taxpayers to direct funds where they think it's most important, because a government can't function that way.
It's 4-0. We're sending this one back to a lower court.
Exactly here. I'm with you guys. All right.
I have nothing. Send the money to the New York Islanders.
That's throwing good money after bad.
Hey, don't hit on the Islanders. When we come back, we're going to get a debate where I think there'll be some separation, and that has to do with immigration. New poll numbers are out here that will make lawmakers sit up and take notice. Forever, they've been punting on this issue, never really getting around to it. But if they listen to the public, now may be the time here that both sides could get on the same page. We'll talk about immigration, the chances for reform, right after this.